Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Wanted to go over my precision rifle or my long range rifle. I'm not really sure what the correct terminology is for it, but this is the first bolt gun that I've ever purchased that I am shooting long range with. So wanted to go over everything that I have on it, which isn't crazy, but I think it came out pretty nice, and I was keeping a budget in mind, of course, as always. So let's go ahead and start from the top, and we'll kind of work our way throughout the rifle and explain everything that I have on it. So on top we have the Leupold Mark IV HD. This is the 4.5 to 18. I would imagine the scope would be most closely related to the Mark V 3.6 to 18. This scope is much cheaper, and obviously that's really why I chose it. It does not have an illumination feature, which some people may or may not like. I don't care about that. I'm not shooting anything at night. So all the competitions or anytime I'm going to the range just to have a good time, I'm shooting during the day. So it wasn't really a feature for me that I cared about. On top, we do have locking elevation turrets, which are really nice. And then we also have locking windage turrets, which I know is a feature that some other expensive scopes do not have. So that's pretty cool. On the side here, we have the parallax adjustment, which goes from 25 all the way to infinity. Very nice throw, nice and smooth. I did have, prior to this scope, I had a Vortex PST Gen 2 3 to 15, and then before that I just had some LPVO. So this is actually the most expensive scope I've ever purchased, and the parallax adjustment in compared to the Vortex is a little smoother on this one. And then I don't believe on the Vortex I did not have locking windage turrets, so that's nice. And it's really the only scope I can compare things to, because I haven't shot really any other scopes. What else do we have on it? The diopter here, the throw lever. So the throw lever was included on the Vortex. I did have to add an additional piece, which wasn't that great. It did slip on me quite a bit, and I had to tighten it down sometimes. This has not loosened on me whatsoever, and I bought the scope over a year ago now. The scope initially was on my Aero Precision 16-inch AR-15 when I was diving into the SPR world. I knew I wanted to get into long range shooting, but didn't want to invest heavily, so I went ahead and bought a nice scope, put it on that gun, and was shooting out the distance 600-700 yards pretty consistently, and said, you know what, I really do like this stuff. And so took that scope off the gun, put it onto this one, so I didn't have to buy another scope, and I've liked it ever since. So the throw here is actually much smoother than the Vortex scope that I had, and then obviously the throw lever that is on the Leupold has not come loose on me. This actually came with it. I would imagine this loosens up at a certain point, but it hasn't done that for me. And again, I've taken this through courses. This has been through the Arizona desert, the Nevada desert, has been beat up, there's scratches all over it, and I haven't had one issue with it whatsoever. So that's the scope. It is a 34mm main tube. So the scope mount is an American Rifle Company Embrace 34mm scope mount. Pretty heavy, very nice mount, but pretty heavy, 11.6 ounces. But again, I knew the kind of shooting I was going to be doing, so I wanted a little bit more of a heavier scope mount. I was comparing this to a Badger Ordnance mount, which those are really nice as well, but much lighter. This is heavier. This is 11.6 ounces, so heavier than a Badger Ordnance mount, heavier than a Spur mount, but I believe the Area 419 mount is heavier than this one. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I'm not quite sure. But the scope mount's been nice. I did torque everything down to spec and witness marked everything. The scope mount does come with a bubble level, which I'm sure I'll throw some B-roll in here. The bubble level was nice because I was actually thinking about getting a scope and then having to get a bubble level on top of it, but some scopes out there did include it. But this, for the price with an included bubble level, I thought it was fairly generous. So not a cheap scope mount, but certainly not the most expensive one out there. I would say it's probably middle of the road. And asked a couple of my buddies that shoot PRS, and they said this one would do just fine. So that's that, and I think the scope actually looks pretty cool as well. So this is a complete Aero Precision Solus bolt action rifle. It is colored in, I believe there's sniper gray. It has a 24-inch 6.5 Creedmoor 1-in-8 twist Sandoro barrel. It's fluted, so a 1-in-8 twist fluted 6.5 Creedmoor barrel. And I guess we can start back here. The buttstock here, the length of pull is adjustable. Also the cheek riser is adjustable. The thumb rest here, also adjustable. It did come, when I purchased it, with this pushed a little bit more anteriorly. I slid it backwards to where it kind of rests my thumb perfectly the way I wanted it. The action is a Remington 700 action, so pretty common. It's a 60-degree bolt throw, which I think is pretty smooth. I've watched other videos in the past. Again, this is the first bolt gun I've ever had, so I don't know what smooth is and what smooth isn't. Make sure if we do this, I think this is one way you can test it. The bolt freely goes back and forth, which it does. I think that's one way to test whether or not you have a fairly decent smoothness on your action there. So Remington 700 action, again, I haven't had one issue with it. It does come with a safety The magazine release is ambidextrous, and this is also adjustable as well. The trigger that comes with the gun, I believe, is a Trigger Tech. I'm not sure which model it is, and I don't know the weight of the trigger, but it seems to be more than light enough for me. So maybe, I don't know, definitely less than 3 pounds. But what's cool about this is actually at the bottom of the trigger guard, and I'll throw some B-roll in here, there's actually an area where you can take an Allen key and lighten up the trigger without having to disassemble the entire gun, which is really nice. I thought that was a pretty nice touch. The grip here, I believe it's called a pistol grip, I'm not sure. The handle is interchangeable with AR-15 parts. So if you have an AR-15 grip that you like, you can actually put it into the Aero Precision Solus. So out front, we do have M-LOK here on the rails, and then it does have an integrated ARCA rail at the bottom. This ARCA rail is pretty nice. Again, it's locked into ARCA right now on this tripod. But I don't know if there's different types of ARCA. I'm sure there is, because I did have an MDT SkyPod on the ARCA rail, but every time I would shoot, the recoil would actually push the bipod off the gun. And so I don't know if it's just a tolerance issue or what, but the Harris bipod that I'm currently running right now is not actually mounted to the ARCA. It's actually mounted to the M-LOK that's on the bottom. So I'm not able to actually move this Harris bipod freely. Maybe with time, as I shoot more and I think I want to invest a little bit more, maybe I'll get an Area 419 ARCA mount and actually attach it to the Harris bipod, because I do like the Harris bipods. They are cheaper, which again, budget was considered throughout all of this, but I actually like it a little better than the Atlas ones, and the Atlas ones are more expensive. So we'll leave it at that. I think that's it for the gun. Oh, the rail here, it does come integrated with a 20 MOA rail, so I didn't have to account for that when I was buying the scope itself. So really nice if you're going to be shooting out the distance. It will increase the amount of elevation you have if you already have an integrated 20 MOA Picatinny mount on the rifle itself. So a lot of companies starting to do that, some don't, but Aero did. The suppressor out front is the Diligent Defense Enticer STI. Very lightweight can, it's titanium. So it's not really good for sustaining fire. It's not full auto rated, but again, I knew this was going on a bolt gun. So I bought this suppressor specifically for the bolt gun, and it's been great. Very, very quiet, again, very light. I do have a Otter Creek Polonium 556 suppressor, much lighter than that suppressor, and I believe it's just as quiet. I do have it direct threaded on. This is the 5/8 by 24 thread that came with the gun itself. The gun did not come with a muzzle device, so I'm just basically direct threading. And I like direct threading all of my suppressors. I don't really like paying extra money for different suppressor mounts and things like that. So I think that's pretty much it, guys. All right, so now that you know everything that's on the gun, let's go ahead and dive into how much it costs, because budget was in mind throughout this gun and everything that I own. I'm always keeping track of how much I'm spending and deciding whether or not it's worth it. So I really wanted a bolt gun, so I knew I was going to be spending much more than an AR-15, because budget in the bolt gun world is very relative. So I do think this is much cheaper than your average precision rifle out there. However, it is not the cheapest, so I'm probably somewhere in the middle. The Aero Precision Solus, I believe this gun right now on their website is $2,200. I believe it's like $2,210. And then the scope, the Leupold Mark IV HD is $1,400. So $700 to $800 cheaper than the Mark V. The mount here is the American Rifle Company. This was $300. I believe that's it. We didn't put a new trigger in it. Yeah, that's it. And then the bipod, Harris bipod is $150. And then the Diligent Defense Enticer is about $700 depending on where you're looking. And then if you include the tax stamp, which you have to because I paid for it, $4,960. That's how much I paid for this gun. So it's a $5,000 bolt gun. I think that is a pretty good price. I don't want to say it's extremely cheap, because you can definitely get into a precision rifle with a lot less. However, this is an extremely functional setup. But I was not looking to go for extremely cheap. I just wanted to get the best value. And I do that with all of my guns. I don't think Aero is extremely cheap. I think that's a great value. There are so many guns out there that are much cheaper than my Aero Precision AR-15, Bear Creek Arsenal, PSA, Stag Arms. So I don't think the AR-15 that I purchased was trash. I think it's a good value. And I use that same thought process when it came to the bolt gun itself. I don't want cheap, but I also don't need to be paying Accuracy International money for something that I just want to shoot for fun and maybe shoot a little bit of PRS matches and even maybe an NRL Hunter match. So this is my bolt gun, guys, $5,000. I really like it. The only other thing that I probably want to add to this is a suppressor cover. I'm finding when I'm shooting 4, 5, 6 rounds at a time, I am getting some mirage from the actual suppressor. So having a suppressor cover on that would be nice. However, I just don't want to pay an extra $100 and $120 for a suppressor cover. This stuff's very expensive, so I'm looking at anywhere between $1 a round for the really cheap SMB stuff to upwards of $2.50 a round for maybe some Burger 130 tacticals. So somewhere in there is kind of what I'm shooting. The Hornadies that I buy are typically about $2 a round, so definitely not cheap, but if you enjoy shooting long range and precision shooting, I think this is a pretty good setup that can hang with everybody. It's not extremely cheap to where you're definitely going to see issues with the gun being accurate. However, it is not Accuracy International, but it can hang with a lot of these guns out there. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and more importantly, I hope you got an idea of how much something like this can cost, because that's something that I'm always keeping in mind when I'm building or buying anything, is how much it costs, not being extremely cheap and not overspending for products. And I think I did a pretty good job with this build. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. We're signing out.